Rage has drawn thousands of protesters. There have been reports of a grenade attack on protesters in the city of Taiz and clashes between demonstrators and police elsewhere. In Bahrain, hundreds have been rallying in support of the country's ruling monarchy. It comes as funerals take place for protesters killed on Thursday. Contrast that with the mood in Egypt. Celebrations on the street 1 week on from the ousting of the country's president. So tens of thousands of people are in Cairo's Liberation Square right now. It's all part of a nationwide march of victory called to celebrate the end of Mubarak's 30-year rule and also to remember the hundreds killed during the 18-day uprising. Live pictures there of Tahrir Square. Let's go over to Hoda Abdelhamid, who's overlooking that square. Hoda, looking at the crowds there, you'd think that Hosni Mubarak was still in power.
Absolutely, but it is, as you said, a day of celebration, of victory. I think I've never seen the square so packed as today, and wherever you look, as eyes can meet on all the side streets, there are people dancing and celebrating, but there are also people pushing with their demands. I think it's a day that you could probably also describe as a day of for keeping the pressure, for reminding the military and everybody else here that the job is still not finished. Remember, they were calling for the fall of the regime. They were calling for the end of a system, and that system is still in place. Now, the military are in charge. The military has given indication that it would like to see parliamentary elections and presidential elections within 6 months. The people here are saying that they wanted to make sure that that will happen, because the whole point of the revolt was to have a civilian rule, democratic rule in the country. And I think the slogans that are being chanted today are certainly an indication. They were called for Ahmed Shafiq, the caretaker prime minister, to resign. People saying they don't recognize him. They were also called for a purification of the system. That's a clear indication that the institutions are still there and they're still functioning the way they used to function. So there is a realization that everything can't be changed immediately, but there's a will here on the ground to keep the pressure up and to make everybody realize that if they're not happy, they would come back to Liberation Square to demonstrate as long as it takes.
So this demonstration then today, Hoda, as you said, not just about celebrating the end of Mubarak's rule, but also about keeping the pressure on the military council in Egypt. Now, the military had expressed concern, Hoda, about the Egyptian economy and getting the country back in business, and had, in fact, warned about a major gathering, major demonstrations like this. What's their reaction to this gathering today? I mean, is there any military presence at all in Tahrir Square today?
There is a military presence, and I have to say it's a very friendly military presence. Early this morning, they were distributing flags to people. Then there was a military band that made its way into the square, played patriotic songs, the national anthem. The slogans certainly are still the people and the army in one hand. But there is also a sort of apprehension about this military rule, because even though the military statements so far, all 5 of those communiques, have shown that the military is responding to the people's demands, there is fear that among some people that the military is not consulting enough with the people who actually carried out the revolt, with other opposition groups. So there is a concern that it's not being transparent enough, but there's also a very careful, let's say, position of not alienating the military. And I think, the whole issue is that the whole country has gone in uncharted territory. Never did the military find itself in this position of having to be the ruler of the country, an interim ruler of the country. The contact with the Egyptian public has been near to minimal over the past 3 decades. And also the Egyptian people are not also very used to having their say. They don't know really how to go about it. So it is an uncharted territory, and I think both sides at the moment are trying to test the waters to see what exactly can work and what cannot work.
Okay, the crowds are extremely loud behind you, Hoda. Let's listen in just a bit, if we can, to the chants there down in Tahrir Square. So, Hoda, what exactly exactly are they chanting right now in Tahrir Square?
Well, to be honest, I can't really tell what they're chanting, but I can tell you that it's a succession of chants the whole day long, really. You have sometimes the national anthem, and that really picks up, unifies the entire square. They all sing together. Then you have chants, the old chants, really, the old slogans. The people want the fall of the regime, because as far as many people are concerned, as I said earlier, that regime hasn't fallen completely. And then there's also chants about raise your head, you are Egyptian, because certainly what happened in this country was really an infusion of pride and dignity at being Egyptian that maybe didn't exist for a very long time. People have always felt alienated. They didn't have a voice. If you didn't have someone who actually protected you, you had very little chances in life to do anything. No matter how hard you worked, you had very little chance with the justice system. You had very little chance with the security forces if they arrested you. So I think there is an infusion of pride and dignity, and you do hear that all the time here on Liberation Square. Just also the amount of flags that are being waved. Earlier there was a very long flag that's been carried overhead, and as soon as that flag entered the square, people started chanting, raise your head, you are Egyptian, or even walk like an Egyptian. So it's really a mixture of feelings, I would say.
So a sense of pride among Egyptians 1 week after the resignation of Hosni Mubarak. Khada Abdelhamid overlooking Tahrir Square. Thanks for now. Now, a victory rally is also being held in Egypt's second largest city, Alexandria. Jamal Al-Shail is there for us. Jamal, give us a sense of what's been happening where you are.
Well, fully tens of thousands of people here in Alexandria had gathered earlier today outside the mosque behind me here, the Qa'id Ibrahim Mosque, which has been the focal point of the pro-democracy demonstrations in the past few weeks. The numbers swelled enormously right after Friday prayers, and then the protesters and the locals here took that march took that demonstration into a march and have gone across the main road, which goes across the alongside the Mediterranean Sea towards Sidi Gabr train station, which is also just at the center of the city here. They're being joined by two other protests and demonstrations, all three of them in celebration in what they've billed as the Friday of Gratitude or Thanks. For being able to oust former President Hosni Mubarak. And whilst there is that celebration, and whilst there was the flags that were being waved and the patriotic and national songs of very famous singers like Shadia and Kulthum and others who are renowned not only here in Egypt but across the Arab world, there was also continuous political demands. The people, as my colleague in Cairo has been saying, were demanding that Mubarak be put on trial. There were pictures of those who were killed, those that are being called the martyrs of the revolution by the people here, that their blood should not have been spilt for no reason. And they want Mubarak to stand trial for that. They want the interior minister to be put on trial. And they want the millions of dollars, in fact, billions of dollars, they say that the Mubarak regime and Mubarak's cronies, as they say, embezzled. They want that returned.
So they have a lot of demands. But what about